Let's take a trip back to June 29th, 1978, in Scottsdale, Arizona, in a quiet apartment. Victoria Berry opened the door to room 132 and found Bob Crane lying still on his bed. Blood stained the white sheets. A VCR cord was wrapped tight around his neck. Like a movie abruptly stopped, and on the table, a bottle of scotch, something he never touched, stood silent, like a question mark. Bob Crane, America's symbol of laughter, the charming Colonel Hogan, died alone amid secret recordings, missing photos, and a chilling threat. Watch out, Bob. Was it his close friend John Carpenter, who argued with him the night before, a jealous husband caught on tape, or a powerful figure who never wanted to be seen, from a drum-playing kid in Connecticut to a TV star? Bob lived two lives, one in the spotlight, another behind the curtain where the camera never stopped rolling. What happened when the lights went out? And why? After more than 40 years, do we still not know who killed Bob Crane? Chapter 1. Was his death written in his childhood? Long before he became the victim of a mystery that still haunts us, Bob Crane was a kid banging on drums in the basement of his Waterbury, Connecticut home, so lost in the rhythm he didn't hear his mom calling him for dinner. Born in 1928, in a modest house during the lean years of the Great Depression, Bob grew up with a salesman father and a devoted homemaker mother. Their home was alive with the sound of the radio comedy shows and Frank Sinatra's voice filling the air. Young Bob, with his easy smile and bright eyes, found joy in those early drum beats, as if they were his way of shouting to the world, "I'm here." By 11, Bob played the drums like he was in a trance, as if the beat was his only way to be heard. At 16, he was up on stage at local clubs, his eyes lighting up with every clap from the crowd. But behind that smile, what was there nobody noticed? A childhood friend recalled. Bob played like he was telling a story, but sometimes he'd stare off, like he wanted to escape Waterbury. That small town wasn't big enough for Bob's dreams. He wanted Hollywood's lights, the applause of a nation. In 1950, at 22, Bob started as a DJ at a New York radio station. His warm voice and quick wit won over listeners, but he hungered for more. By 1956, he moved to Los Angeles, joining KNX, CBS's big radio station. The studio was thick with cigarette smoke, laughter ringing out as Bob cracked jokes and interviewed stars like Marilyn Monroe and Bob Hope. They called him the king of the airwaves. But each night, when the studio lights dimmed, Bob stood by the window, gazing at the glowing city. "I'm afraid one day they'll all turn away," he once told a friend. That line came back later, as people tried to piece together the fragments of his life. Bob hid his insecurities behind that smile, but the pressure to make it big in 1950s America, where Hollywood was the ultimate prize, kept him running. As he climbed the ladder of fame, something inside him quietly cracked, like a drumbeat pounding too hard, unnoticed. His conservative Catholic family taught him about hard work and public image, but he always felt he wasn't enough. Bob's early years played out like a smooth swing tune, but who knew that beneath the melody? A darker chord was waiting to sound. Was Bob's fear of being forgotten the first beat of the tragedy to come? Chapter 2. When success brought a double life. Bob Crane once stood amid the applause on the Hogan's Heroes set and wondered, would they still clap if they knew what I keep in the dressing room? In 1965, when CBS cast him as Colonel Robert Hogan, Bob knew it was his shot at the big time. The comedy about a World War II POW camp took off, and Bob, with his sly grin and sharp delivery, turned Hogan into an icon. For 6 seasons, he led his band of prisoners through risky schemes with smarts and humor, captivating millions of American viewers. Laughter filled the sound stages, and Bob earned 2 Emmy nominations. Crane is the embodiment of American optimism. One article wrote, "But fame came with a cost. Hogan's heroes caught flack for making light of war, and Bob had to maintain the all-American hero image, always cheerful, always perfect." After each scene, when the lights went out, Bob slipped into his dressing room. No directors, no laughter, just cameras and photos. lined up like sentries. He called it his treasure, a crew member recalled. Bob once held an album, saying, "This keeps me alive." But his eyes were strange, like he was hiding something. Some speculated that album held photos of someone powerful in the industry. What were those pictures? Bob reveled in Hollywood's glow. He partied in neon-lit bars, joking with stars, drink in hand, back at KNX radio. He'd charmed millions with his warm voice, interviewing Monroe and Hope. He popped up on the Dick Van Dyke Show and the Donna Reed Show, proving his acting chops. But the pressure to stay perfect weighed on him. He started filming videos, at first just a hobby to capture Hollywood's sparkle. Each tape was a trap preserving the glamour but also locking away another side of him. He wanted to hold on to the spotlight. But every time he hit record, he stepped deeper into a dangerous world. The 1960s were Hollywood's golden age, but full of contradictions. The public demanded clean stars, while a free love culture crept in. Bob stood on that line, both the beloved Colonel Hogan and a man craving something deeper. A colleague said, Bob was the life of the party, but sometimes he'd leave early, like he was running from himself. His career soared, but those tapes grew quietly, like a secret no one could control. Who was watching those tapes when Bob wasn't looking? Did someone out there see Bob's tapes and feel threatened? Chapter 3, a lifestyle that tore him apart? Bob Crane stepped off the Hogan's Heroes set, where canned laughter echoed from stand-in audiences, and returned to a home where his marriage was crumbling. In 1949, he married Ann Terzian, his high school sweetheart, and they built a family with 3 kids, Robert, Deborah, and Karen. Early on, their Los Angeles home was filled with children's laughter and the smell of Ann's baking. But as Hollywood's spotlight grew brighter, Bob changed. He fell into fleeting affairs, using his star power to draw women in neon-lit bars. Ann, heartbroken, couldn't take his reckless lifestyle. They divorced in 1969, leaving the kids caught between fame and family. In 1970, Bob married Sigrid Valdis, real name Patricia Olson, his Hogan's Heroes co-star. They had a son, Scotty, and adopted a daughter. But the new marriage didn't pull Bob from his old ways. He met John Carpenter, a Sony equipment salesman, through co-star Richard Dawson. The two became close, hitting bars together, using Bob's fame to attract women and film adult videos. Bob's dressing room, once home to costumes, turned into a strange shrine of pleasure stacked with VHS tapes, hidden cameras, and faces of women unaware they were recorded. His son Robert said, "Dad kept a whole stash of tapes, like a secret no one could touch." Some believe those videos led Hollywood to turn its back, refusing to cast Bob after Hogan's Heroes. Bob craved validation from women, like he once craved stage applause. But after every party, he came home to emptiness, a friend recalled. Bob said he wanted to stop, but he couldn't, like the tapes held him hostage. The 1970s sexual revolution allowed personal freedom, but the public still judged fallen stars harshly. Bob was torn between wanting love and fearing exposure. A Scottsdale bartender remembered. Bob was laughing. Then the phone rang. After a silent minute, he put his glass down, face pale, and left without a word. He never came back. Who called him? And what did they want? The scandal didn't just wreck his family, it left Bob judged and isolated. After that night, he went back to his room, played an old tape, and watched alone in the dark. The screen's blue glow lit his face, not the glow of fame, but a warning who was behind that call. And were those tapes the key to Bob's tragedy? Chapter 4 betrayed a rift with a close friend. When Bob Crane met John Carpenter, it was just a handshake between an artist and a tech guy. But over time, it became a chain he couldn't break. Carpenter, a Sony salesman, brought cutting-edge cameras, feeding Bob's obsession with filming adult videos. They roamed bars from Los Angeles to small towns, Bob using his star smile and smooth voice to charm women. Carpenter always there with a camera. They were a perfect pair in that secret world. But by 1978, Bob wanted out. His son Robert said, Dad told me Carpenter was becoming a burden. He wanted to cut ties. Bob felt trapped. Carpenter didn't just rely on Bob's fame, he relied on those tapes, secrets that could ruin them both, a week before his death. Bob told his son someone was watching him. He switched hotels, avoided room phones, but the fear stayed. A friend said. Bob looked tense, always glancing over his shoulder like someone was right behind him. The 1970s were full of clingy relationships in showbiz, where people like Carpenter lived off a star's glow. But when Bob wanted change, did he underestimate the danger of breaking away? That summer of 1978, Bob was performing beginner's luck in Scottsdale, Arizona. Carpenter flew in to visit, and they met at the Safari nightclub on June 28th. The mood wasn't light, witnesses said. Bob slammed his hand on the table, face red. Carpenter stood, said nothing, just stared at Bob for a long time, like memorizing him. Then he left quietly. A waiter said. No one spoke, but the air felt frozen. Some speculated Carpenter feared losing his ticket to the elite if Bob ended their friendship. Was there more in that stare after that night? Bob went back to his apartment alone. Streetlights casting shadows on his face, a face without its usual smile. Bob knew he was on a dangerous edge. He wanted to leave the tapes, leave Carpenter. But it was too late. After that night, he stopped mentioning Carpenter. A week later, he was found in his hotel room, his head bashed in. If that wasn't an act of rage, what was it? Was Carpenter's final look the start of Bob's tragedy? Chapter 5, Self-Blame, a falling career and a last effort. In a small room after a show in Arizona, Bob Crane quietly removed his stage makeup, his eyes lingering on an old photo taped to the mirror him as Colonel Hogan, grinning like a man who never knew defeat. Now, there was little to smile about. When Hogan's Heroes ended in 1971, Bob thought Hollywood would still welcome him. But the spotlight faded. From the Love Boat to Policewoman, his name slipped through the credits like a stranger, no longer resonating. He turned to theater, performing beginner's luck in small-town venues, where applause grew thin, echoing in half-empty halls. The press called him a has-been. Some sources claimed Hollywood blacklisted him over the adult video scandal and his refusal of small roles. Clinging to his big star image, Bob kept partying, kept filming, as if trying to hold on to a flicker of his past glory. His son, Scotty, said, family photo albums mixed with pictures of strange women, happy memories and desires tangled together. Inseparable. But after each show, Bob returned to an empty room, facing his tired reflection. A theater colleague recalled. Bob was all laughs on stage, but backstage, he'd go quiet, staring off like he was lost in his own story. He blamed himself for squandered chances. He once told a friend, I messed it all up, but I'll fix it, just need one more big role. But Hollywood stopped calling. A strange clue surfaced in Scottsdale. A stagehand said, Bob got a letter yellowed paper with "Watch out." Bob cut from magazines, like a ransom note from an old movie. He stared at it, hands trembling, then tucked it into his suitcase, saying nothing. Some believed it was a threat tied to his adult videos, maybe from a powerful figure wanting silence. Where did that letter go? Hollywood in the 1970s was brutal. Fallen stars were forgotten or judged. Bob faced the stigma that he couldn't move past Hogan, and each step sank him deeper into loneliness. He tried to rise, but each night, he sat on his hotel bed, lights off, in the dark. He heard the slow whir of a tape reel, though the room was silent, as if his past was whispering in his ear. Was that real in his mind, the final warning of danger closing in? Chapter 6, Despair? The final days and a mysterious death? Silver hair, clouded eyes. Bob Crane walked the theater halls like a shadow. Colleagues said he still smiled on stage, but his eyes held no sound. In the summer of 1978, Bob lived alone in a Scottsdale, Arizona apartment, performing beginner's luck at a local theater. He worried about money, his fading career, and the adult tapes that could destroy everything. A friend said, Bob talked about starting over, but he felt it was too late, like time had left him behind. He paced his apartment, checking the locks repeatedly, as if sensing something was wrong. A week earlier, he told his son Robert someone was watching him, but didn't say who. On June 28th, Bob went to the Safari nightclub with John Carpenter. The air was heavy, witnesses said. Bob slammed his hand down, voice sharp. Carpenter stood, said nothing, just stared at Bob, cold, like it was a final look. A waiter said, "The air felt frozen." Bob returned to his apartment alone. A bottle of scotch, a drink he never touched, sat unopened on the table, like a question mark. Some investigators and detectives guessed the killer brought it, a wordless message. On the morning of June 29th, Victoria Berry entered apartment 132. The room's lights were still on. The TV glowed blue, flickering. Bob lay still, blood pooling like a map on the bed, a VCR cord tight around his neck, like a song rewound and broken. Police found type B blood and brain tissue in Carpenter's rental car, but the evidence was lost due to a botched investigation. There was no sign of forced entry. A hotel worker said, "The night before, I heard a loud thud from Bob's apartment, like something hit the wall hard. A black bag of sensitive photos vanished. A staff member swore it was on the table the night before, but by morning, it was gone. Police assumed family took it, but no one confirmed. Some speculated a powerful figure in Bob's videos might have hired a hitman, or a jealous husband sought revenge." Scottsdale in 1978 was a quiet town, unprepared for a Hollywood murder. The crime scene was contaminated, and Bob's family took items before the investigation finished, losing chances for truth. Bob knew he was losing control, but he didn't see how close the danger was. He'd talked about starting fresh, leaving the tapes and mistakes behind. But someone might not have given him that chance. Who left that scotch bottle there? And why was it still sealed? Epilogue, a legacy and an unanswered mystery more than 40 years later. Bob Crane still flickers on screens, but only as Colonel Hogan, his bright smile frozen in Hogan's Heroes, not as the real Bob. The man himself is locked away in a missing bag of photos. The 2002 film Autofocus retold his life, with Greg Kinnear as Bob, but his family slammed it for exaggeration. His son Robert wrote a book, pointing fingers at John Carpenter or Bob's second wife. Patricia Olson, Scotty, his youngest son, sparked controversy by posting Bob's adult videos online, calling it vindication. Robert called it a second betrayal. And Hollywood? They just stayed silent. Bob's life is a lesson about the cost of fame. He reached the top, but unchecked habits and Hollywood's pressures dragged him down. The 1970s, torn between sexual freedom and moral expectations, put Bob on a dangerous edge. Some say Hollywood blacklisted him over the videos, costing him roles. He was a victim of himself, but also of a ruthless industry where personal mistakes were harshly judged. Bob's murder remains a mystery. John Carpenter, with type B blood in his car and that tense night, was the main suspect. But Carpenter died in 1998, never convicted. In his final years, he dodged every question about Bob, even when pressed. DNA tests in 2016 showed the blood in the car wasn't Bob's, stirring new doubts. Some on Quora speculate a powerful figure in Bob's videos might have hired a hitman. A jealous husband once taped a slashed photo of Bob to his girlfriend's door. The missing black bag of photos, what did it hold? Bob's last photo is a blurry frame. He's smiling, standing next to someone unclear, the camera rolling. That was his final scene. And that camera, it's still missing. The man who made America laugh left behind a question no one dares laugh about. Who killed Bob Crane? If that bag of photos is ever found, will Bob's secret finally be unlocked?